Welcome to the panel of the Retrokompott podcast in context of the B3 Biennale of Moving Image. Thank you for inviting us. And my name is Patrick and I am one of the hosts. We are the Retrokompott podcast. For 5 years, we have been taking our listeners on a time travel through the history of computer games and video games. And in the context of the podcast, we also regularly interview legends from the scene, and the participants today were also guests there. You can find us at retrokompott.de. In addition, we also broadcast a video get-together on Twitch from time to time, where we play old games together. Before we start, we would like to give you an info where we are today. We have founded a small retro oasis in Hamburg, a museum with over 50 exhibits. My colleague, co-founder and co-host Robin, is also in this location and will show you a few exhibits with interesting games from time to time. Robin, are you ready?
Bienvenue and welcome to our playable museum. My name is Robin and we started about 30 years ago in the games industry, from a games rental, purchase and sales shop to a club for the preservation of the game culture to our small museum we are right now. We have always accompanied the retro scene. Of course, at that time, this was not yet retro. Luckily, despite other jobs in our company, we never lost sight of the old devices and games and store them over the years. Like with good wine, the older the better, you know. At some point, we had to decide what to do with the stock, and through our experience with the podcast, there's sometimes over 10,000 retro fans at the month joined our channel. So we decided to make the collection public again. As a public museum, for visitors, small events or celebrations, we want to make a journey into the past. This is the current place, and it's fascinating to see that not only contemporary witnesses are interested in such a journey, younger people visit us and play and study the games and computer graphics and computer art of the past. Due to the corona pandemic, the project was almost destroyed. With help, we would not exist anymore. And we are still looking for supporters for this project, because there is nothing better than to see happy people going home at the end of an evening after an event. Every day, we continue to fight for the preservations of this oasis to play culture. I will interrupt the panel from time to time and show you individual games and hardware that were graphically and artistically interesting in their time period and have influenced the history of computer games. But before that, we will continue with the panel.
Yeah, of course we are not alone here today. It's about graphics and computers, and we are lucky to have an expert with us in our team for a long time, who has been working on C64 games for companies like Starbyte, Magic Bytes, and various publications in the demo scene. Iron Soldier, Stone Age, Invest, Rolling Ronnie are, for example, his early works. Assembloids, Karen and the Tangled Tentacles, the newer ones, as he still pixelates for old computers and consoles, and he's also responsible for parts of the current high-quality graphical implementation of Eye of the Beholder on the C64, which will be ready soon. We are proud that he's also a member of the extended team of our podcast for years, and that he joined us today as a co-host and expert. Welcome, Oliver Lindau.
Yes, hello, Patrick and Robin. Yeah, as you have said, I've been quite a long time with computer graphics and stuff, and I started my stuff somewhere in the late 80s, and have been a computer graphic artist for computer games from 1990 to 1994, about the time, and left the business back then and got back to the business, not to the business, but to the demo scene somewhere in 2008. For some years, did some demo stuff, did pixel art mostly, and after some years, a friend of mine asked me to do graphics for games again, and in 2015, I started with this thing, and where the thing went back then.
Yeah, of course, we have also international guests on this panel today. Next, I would like to welcome Tony Galvez, a Spanish video game designer who did graphics and sounds on various systems. I met him at a retro event in London, and perhaps it's nice to hear how the development of games and graphics changed in the years. He did some conversions of retro games too, provided video and characters, for example, for the 8-Bit Symphony retro project, and is working for old machines like the Game Boy still today. Welcome to our panel, Tony. Hi.
Hello, guys. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, one guest will join us some minutes later, but we have a special one too. And it's a special honor for us to welcome the next participant of this round. He worked for more than 30 years in the game industry on more than 300 titles as artist, game designer, manager, producer, and author. He worked for Imagine Software and Ocean, for example, and has been involved in several games for the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, such as The Neverending Story, Leaderboard, Miami Vice, Highlander, Terra Cresta, Silent Service, Platoon, Target Renegade, SimCity, and more. He is a true industry veteran and computer artist, a retro legend. Welcome, Simon Butler.
Welcome.
Yeah, I do prefer the name veteran rather than legend. I don't know what I've done really that people like. Just haven't left the industry. I stick around like a bad smell. But yeah, I'm busy at the moment. Today I was finishing off some pixels for a Hamburg company, Crazy Bunch, doing some old school pixels for a new Leisure Suit Larry title. So yeah, I keep busy. I like to think that I'm okay. I'm far from one of the best. There are people out there who are infinitely better than me. And hopefully I'll get a chance to name drop some of the amazing artists that are out there.
Yeah, the next participant is joining us in the background. We have to wait some seconds until he's here, but we can start with the first round if you want. It would be interesting for us. How did you get the idea to create graphics for computer games?
Who's going to go first? Oh, okay, I'll go first. I had no thought about about being a pixel artist. I loved the arcades. I loved the arcade machines, and I was a great fan of all the games. I spent way too much time and money. And then the industry, it wasn't even the industry, began. Companies started appearing. There were several in Liverpool. And a friend of mine asked me to do one job. So I went, did this one job. It took 2 days. It was the best paid job, or the best paid 2 days of my entire career. And I thought that was it. I was finished. I was going to go back to London, work in advertising, but life had different plans for me. So my advertising career never really took off. And I found myself back in Liverpool. And I just thought, well, I'll do a few more computer games and then head back to London. And 37 years later, I'm still here. So I'm either doing something right or doing something wrong. I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
Tony, why did you create graphics for computer games?
Well, since I was a kid, I always loved to draw, and computers and consoles always fascinated me. So I decided one day I would like to do graphics for video games, and then I saw the Spectrum, and I met the Commodore Amiga, and I started playing with the Deluxe Paint, and I were quite satisfied. It was quite satisfying. So I decided to keep learning myself, because when I was a teenager, there were not the school for video game graphics and art, so it was all like painting painting with real canvas and all that thing. Nothing about related to video games or graphics. So I learned myself all these years, and I found that I worked in more than 30 games in all my career. So it's pretty amazing to be like that, you know, to work on all those games for different systems.
Oliver, how did you get the idea to do graphics for computers? At what time was that?
Well, doing graphics was always a passion. I was painting and sketching all the time since I was a little child, and when later in school, I played some games. First of all, on Friends C64, which was really fascinating. It's I feel similar to Tony, but things. Well, I need some time for this. I was mostly playing games, and sometime my father bought a Amstrad CPC, which was quite fascinating. This was the first time I did computer graphics, I have to say, with basic commands, which was very archaic, I have to say. And later on, when I had my own C128, I started with a tool called Koala Painter, which was from today's perspective, it was quite an adventure, because I did not own the original and had to use the original. I have to say that there was something like, it was very like sketching, because you had a tablet with a pen to paint pictures, and I do not own the original and need to do this with the joystick, and the controls were quite they were not very precise, and pictures took way much time, but it was quite fascinating. And after some time, then a tool came out which was called Schulemak Construction Kit by Palace Software. And this was a kind of a game construction kit which has all parts which are necessary to do shooter games. And so you could do some animations with little objects. You can do background graphics. You could do attack waves and stuff. And this was kind of a passion from that moment. And I tried to get into the industry, which wasn't that easy, because I wasn't living in big cities where all communities were along. I lived somewhere in rural areas, and I took half a year phoning after company after company after company after company until one said yes.
We can now welcome the last participant of this round. He's now online. It's the editor Richard Löwenstein, who has worked for Amiga Joker and PC Joker for a long time as journalist, and was later also editor-in-chief there. Even today, he's still well known in the retro scene, and in the last years, he introduced a game series called Reshoot, now working on the third part for the Amiga. Hi, Richard. Try to switch on the micro, please. One second.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Better now?
Yeah, it's better. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Richard.
We're in the first round, and we ask, how did you get the idea to create graphics for computer games or to do computer games? When did you first time think about that? You are a journalist in the early days.
Must have been some kind of 82, 83 or something, when I found a gaming magazine in our local store called Computer and Video Games. It's an English magazine, and I was totally, I mean, I was like 12 or 30 years by that time. I already played like Pong or Centipede at the arcades. And in Computer and Video Games, the magazine, they reviewed games for the Sinclair ZX81 or for the Commodore 64, and I was totally amazed by what can be done. And so that's when kind of the virus was implanted into my soul, and I really wanted to have a computer, and so I got my Texas Instruments TI 99 in probably 83 or something, or 84, and just began developing games and drawing my own computer graphics by having some checkerboard thing in front of me, and with a pen just drawing filling all the squares, and then trying to somehow translate all these filled squares from a checkerboard into the Commodore, into the TI. And I also got a computer language called Extended Basic, which was quite powerful for that time. And this was when I started coding games for my own enjoyment, basically. And later I purchased a Commodore 64 that was like 85, I think, and began developing in assembler, because assembler or machine language is the language to choose if you want fast and flashy looking games on a home computer system at that time. And that's when I began developing games on the Commodore 64. And I actually published my first game in 85. That was for a German computer magazine. Oliver, you're too kind.
Ta-da! It was this one.
No, that's actually the second one.
That's the second one?
That's the second one, yeah.
Oh, Moby Games is lying.
They are. It's the second one, because the game you show here is called, I don't know if people can see it, it's called Twinkie Goes Hiking. And that was published in 1986. And that was the first game which was actually published kind of European-wide, because I developed a game with a split screen feature. Basically, it's a running game which enables two players to have like who's the first on top of a hill. That's why the game is called Twinkie Goes Hiking. And I sent the game to Ocean and British Telecom Software, to Gremlin Graphics, and all these publishers which had big names in Europe at that time. And actually, I got very kind letters from some of these companies, and one letter even had a contract with it. That was from Firebird Software, British Telecom Software, and they published the game. That was in '86, and that's why I actually thought, hey, this is fun. I just do something fun, which is great, and I also get some money for it. And that's how my, let's call it a career, how I started developing games. And that's it basically. And later on I did Amiga Joker, and now I'm doing other games, but that's probably not what you wanted to know right now.
And nice to see the example. Thanks, Oliver. If you talk, we can see it again. Perhaps our listeners, visitors did not see it. Oliver?
Yeah, this game here.
Oh God, don't start it, please.
It's pretty hard, I have to say.
You have to use the joystick.
Yeah, I do.
I think you're.
Oh my God.
Could it be that this is two-player mode? Because actually the computer-controlled character at the lower part of the screen should he should be able to reach the goal, usually. So you need a second player.
Okay, we want to see more examples, and Robin is here in the location, and I think he can show us some art, some graphics, some games of the past. Robin, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, and as you see, I got our first piece of technique from the. In this case, it looks a bit modern, but it isn't, because the first model of the Atari 2600 was first called Atari VCS, or Video Computer System, and it was first made or found in September the 11th on 1977. So I wasn't even 1 year old when this thing came to market, but it had a different shape at first. It was a bit more stylish with a wooden front, something you see in American cars in the days. Yeah, let's start with some infos about the system. So it's in the end of 70s. We call this game system a second generation system because you can put games in it, like this one, which I will show you soon. This one is, of course, an iconic game. The system itself has been sold 30 million times, and it has a 8-bit processor with 1.19 megahertz and has an astonishing amount of 120 bytes of RAM. It's not kilobytes, it's not megabytes, it's bytes of RAM. And this thing, as I mentioned, sold 30 million times. And I show you why it's sold 30 million times, because this is one heck of a game. I put it in, turn it around, and then I switch it on, and I will show you what happens right now on this screen. So you see, Earth should be defended, and you're the one who should defend it. So I pick the control, which is not the right one, but this is much easier to control. And I start it, and then I can move the base and shoot upwards. So it's just a second. That's the wrong key. No. So this game is from called Space Invader, as I mentioned. It's from Taito. This is the original company who produced the game, but they produced it for an arcade. So you can only see this game at first in an arcade. I mean, like a store with many arcades in it, and you pay for every game. And the Atari 2600 was a console where you didn't have to pay for every game. You just buy a game, buy the console, put the game in, and you can play as long as you like. And this was something impossible for at that time. And so the company sold so many games from this type of module. It was you cannot imagine. It was millions and millions, and they made $450 million profit with this game. And Space Invaders is considered one of the most influential video games of all the time. It helped expand the video game industry from a novelty to a global industry. And what does that mean is that 30 million systems, from then I think at least 10 million systems in the early 80s, which made it possible for bigger companies to produce video games. And this game for the system is from 1980 because it had made a conversion. And yeah, of course, we have it in our store or in our museum. And from time to time, some younger guys play it. And it's always funny to see 10-year-old girls and boys play a game from 1977. Yeah, let's move a bit. We've got something more here. So I take the camera, make some shaky movements. No, it's not so much shaky. No, don't show pictures here. So this one is our next participant. Just a second. At first, this one. Look at the beauty. The beauty of the VC20. It's Commodore's first try to produce a machine for the big market, not just for the expensive market. And so the Commodore VC20, you know it as VIC-20 around the world, but in Germany they decided to call it VC20. Yeah, to sound it not so strangely. If you got German ancestry or know what VIC means, okay, you got the point. This is a true home computer. It has a MOS processor with 1.1 megahertz in the power. It has 5 kilobytes of SRAM, so not bytes like in the Atari. And it was sold in this one is a German version. It could have been sold for 199 Deutschmarks or 199 pounds. And this is from 1981. And from that time, as I mentioned at the Atari, many bigger companies thought about making conversions for home computers and video games. And so they made something which would be now would be impossible, this game has a Donkey Kong version for it. So as you see, Donkey Kong is of course a Nintendo game, and Nintendo always keeps it private mostly. But in this time they thought, oh, so many VC20s or VIC-20s around, let's give a company a time to build or made a conversion. And so this one is a conversion, and this is the true graphics you will see. This is a much more modern version of a screen, because this is a flat screen, but it is a flat screen with a very good electronics within. So you nearly see as same crappy picture as you would have seen it on a television in the early 80s. And this game is firstly made in 1981 for the arcade, and Nintendo made a lot of money with it. And this version for the game is from, I think, 1983. So you got Donkey Kong, which is the guy here up. This is the princess. Oh, the princess is gone. And the funny thing is that if it changes the picture, you will see that there's a guy. And the guy, you would say, of course, this is Mario. No, this isn't Mario. This is the jump guy, because Nintendo later called him Mario and gave him a job because he was just a jump guy at the beginning. For many, this is here. This is Mario. I could move him if I would start it. So start with 25 meters. And now I could move the Jumpman, aka Mario. Mario doesn't look so well, but he's in good shape, I think. Mario is dead. At least one of his lives. Another thing to tell, this machine was the entrance for Commodore in the home computer market, as I mentioned, and we will come later to another machine which is more common in German living rooms and around the 80s, but this one was, of course, a start for many. But now I will do another quick change of position. You can see now our location here. I just move around. And we take on the other side of the world. So this machine here is called MSX, and the MSX is something you would call also just as I mentioned with the VC20 in the game, a very strange behavior of companies, because the MSX is a cooperation between Microsoft and the ASCII Corporation. In 1983 to standardize a system, like you would think about video systems like VHS or Video 2000 or Betamax, something like this. And it was this system, not this one, but the systems you could see in the market was made by National, Sony, Pioneer, Panasonic, Samsung, Sharp, Philips, Canon, Yamaha, Toshiba, Mitsubishi, Sanyo, JVC, Fujitsu, Spectra Video, Goldstar, Hitachi, Kyocera, Yashica, Daewoo, Dragon MSX, and Casio. So this is just a standard, and they could change the shape. They could change many things about the machines, and it was just a standard. So it was much easier for the Eastern market to build something, not that you have 10 types of systems, you just have one type of system. And they even made it more easier for them because they made new generations, but the new generation always have to be compatible with the generation before. And so this means for Japan, aside of the Famicom system, which was of course a video game system, this one is more like it's a home computer, some sort of that. And it was a starting point for many series like this one. I will talk about later, Antarctic Adventure. It was a starting point for Bomberman, for Metal Gear Solid, for Parodius and Puyo Puyo. The system has a C-Log processor running at 3.58 megahertz and has 8 kilobyte of RAM. The one machine we are running here is a Philips. So this is a version made for Philips, and it has 128 kilobytes of memory, which is much memory for machines of that age. And I will show you the game, because the game is very nice. It's called Antarctic Adventure. It's from 1983. And it's from Konami, as you see, a very hidden brand in the middle of the screen. And the game is very, very beautiful. For you as children, you can play it. As grown-ups, you like to play it because it's difficult in sort of points. We can start it. And I might show you, because you have to control with the joystick the penguin, and the penguin has to run to the Antarctic, around the Antarctic, and you can do bad things like I just fall into the. I do have to turn around, and the graphical effect is very easy, but it works in my eyes. It's just some white ground and some spots moving, and so the machine doesn't have a problem with we call sprites, which have to be shown. This one is, there's not so much movement in it, we could say. Yeah, I have a third one, which I might show you now. A fourth one, sorry. Counting is not an issue here. And this one is, let's have a look what we take now. Let's take this one. This one is also a machine more known in England. This one is called Amstrad CPC. For most of the European customers or kids, this is one of the first machines they see, aside from another machine we will see soon. And the Amstrad CPC is from, as mentioned, from Amstrad. It's made from, it started from 1984 up to 1990, and it sold 3 million units. What you see on the right side is, of course, a tape drive. And a tape drive means you have cassettes. And on the cassettes, there you have the data. And what? Data on it? No music? No, it's data. It's as you would hear something, you can also put data on it. And so this was the easiest and cheapest way to produce in mass media, in mass production, media that you can transfer to the people and do not take so much money of them, because games are expensive. And the games you can see now here is at least one of the better conversions. And the green is not an error of the machine, not an error of our smartphone, which is filming right now. That's the image. It's a green screen applied to the machine, because the switching supply for the energy is in the monitor, and it goes back to the machine. And Amstrad always wanted to build a machine which is cheap. And why using 2 power units for one computer? Instead, you put it on the monitor and give it back to the home computer. And then with this sort of machine, okay, it's a green screen, but you can also had bought it with a color monitor, which made it even more expensive. I think I've got the numbers somewhere here. I think it was 200 or 300. Here's the price, which made it 500 D-Mark or Deutschmark more expensive. And what you see is one of the most iconic brawlers, or I would call it brawlers. It's called International Karate Plus, and it's a version you might see in the US as the name Chop and Drop. You can choose one of the 3 warriors and have to be the last one standing, and then you have to do some nasty things with balls falling around. You have to defend them. This game is designed by Archer McLean, and Systems 3 is the company. It's an English company, and it's from October 1987. So we're moving in the time, and as you see between the other ones, okay, this one is green, but you see the pixels are even smaller now. I have to go a bit further. Perhaps you can see. What a pleasure. I think from this point of view, a green view back to Patrick.
Yeah, thanks for showing us. We have another computer since some months, but we are not really compatible with it. Perhaps Simon can help us. We have a Sinclair Spectrum, and the Germans or some European countries.
Which one is it? The one?
It's a +2, I think. But the Germans or some European countries have problems with it, and we don't understand why the English industry or the English people like this computer. Can you tell us something about the special of this computer and the special of the love to the computer? We can't understand it.
I think the simple answer is because Here in the UK, we had what was called the 8-bit wars. Kids in the schoolyard would argue. I mean, I was too old for all this, so I only read about this or heard about it from other people. So the kids would stand and they would argue, my computer's better than yours because mine's a Commodore 64 and I've got wonderful scrolling and I've got 8-bit music, chip tunes, and the Spectrum owners would say, yeah, but you've got those nasty big pixels and we've got tiny little square pixels. So I think Spectrum owners, it was a very British machine. Because it was an English product, the target audience initially was England. Until last year, I did not know that the Spectrum had traveled outside of England. I knew from working in France and in Berlin and Hamburg that the 64 was the machine. And I assumed that the 64 was all of Europe. But I went to Poland last year to a retro convention, and the machine from Poland for the rest of Europe seems to be the Spectrum. The Spectrum jumped right across Belgium, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, and landed
As far
in
as
Poland
I know,
and
it's very
Czechoslovakia.
popular in Russia.
I believe so. Yes, there are people in Russia creating absolutely amazing games. I mean, they are pushing. I think it's because the longer you have a machine, the more you can get it to do. There is a computer programmer here in the UK, very famous. His name's Jim Bagley. And he managed to get all of Dragon's Lair into the ZX Spectrum. It doesn't look like the video arcade game Dragon's Lair with all the colors, but it's Dragon's Lair. You can see what's happening on screen. And Jim keeps managing to get really big games into the Spectrum. So the longer you have a machine, the more you can make it sing and dance. But I think the love affair was because it was English. People, Alan Sugar, the guy behind Amstrad, he was hoping that the English market would like a second English machine, the Amstrad, and it was never as successful. I mean, I liked all three machines, mainly because I developed graphics for all three of the 8-bit machines. So I had no real sort of preference, one more than the other. I mean, I liked the Spectrum because of the square pixels. So when you drew something on the Spectrum, it looked like what you saw in your head. When you drew something on the Amstrad or the Commodore 64, you had these huge wide pixels that were 2 across and 1 down. So
well, but only because people were addicted to the multicolor mode. C64 had the same graphic modes as the Spectrum with a higher resolution, but almost nobody used it except for conversions of the Spectrum.
Exactly. Commodore 64 owners wanted, because of the color limitation in the high res mode, 64 owners, they wanted every color. Well, it was a joke we used to have. We used to say, Commodore 64 owners want every color on screen at once, flashing, and that's because you could. And some of the 64 coders that I worked with, once they started getting technical and getting sprites in the border and being really clever, I mean, some of the demo guys now are just doing unreal things, but people would not accept. I mean, I actually did a game in high-res mode because I wanted the graphics to look like the arcade graphics. The game was called Athena, and one of the reviews said the graphics looked like they were drawn by a blind monkey. And they were probably right. But yeah, in order to justify the Commodore 64 having a game, you wanted it to be as colorful as possible. I mean, some of the games that are out there from my era, games like The Untouchables, RoboCop, Batman, they were amazing. The artist Steve Thompson, he really could make the Commodore sing when it came to doing graphics. Me, I was like, I was okay, but nothing special.
Let me tell you something. Remembering Combat School, it's got amazing graphics in all the versions, but the one I prefer is the Commodore 64 because I got high-res characters, colorful.
Yes and no. When Combat School, the arcade machine, was delivered to Ocean, we'd not seen a game like it before because it had training levels and then lots of training levels, I think maybe 8. And then there was an adventure where you used your skills. And I was the lead artist on the, well, I was the main artist on the 64 version. And I said to my lead coder, Dave Collier, I said, can we please have high-res overlays on the sprites? Because there's only, we had split screen. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, okay, there's only one sprite on screen or one character. So it made up out of all the sprites. And so we had ordinary double width pixels and then high-res overlays. And the reason that I mean, it wasn't me being clever. I remembered playing a game from Odin Software called Heartland on the Commodore 64, and I could not believe the graphics when I saw them. It had a black background, it had a little guy wearing a top hat, and it didn't look like Commodore 64 graphics. And it was the coder who said, oh no, they've put high-res overlays on top of the double width pixels. And ever since I saw that sprite, I always wanted an opportunity to use high-res overlays. And there's quite a few games that do it. I think Rupert the Bear, which is an English comic book, used them. I can't think of any.
Well, there were many.
Dragon Ninja.
Yeah.
Especially from Ocean. Ocean were pioneers with this kind of stuff. The first game I've seen with those overlays was Rambo 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they really did many games with this, RoboCop or Platoon or Untouchables, I think, and all of those games had overlaid sprites.
That was my idea. That was it was
pretty cool because I did use it, and it was an inspiration for me for the Rolling Ronnie sprite.
Yeah. It was the only way around, really. I mean, that was the only argument that when it came to the schoolboys arguing in the playground, it was the only argument that they had against Commodore owners. Spectrum owners would say, okay, but you've got horrible, nasty double width pixels. But then high-res overlays came along, and the poor old Spectrum owners had to shut up. But I will mention something before that, Robin mentioned it earlier, the VIC-20, because the VIC-20 is actually coming back this year. There is a company here in England called, let me see, they're called Retro Games. They've already brought the C64 Mini, and the C64 is back. They have games built in, but they also have a workable keyboard. And, it is just a Commodore 64 again, but the VIC-20 is making a comeback. You know, go figure.
Yeah, one question, Simon. We have the Sinclair Spectrum here in our museum, in our location, and we want to play good games on it. Do you have any recommendations? What should we show our visitors on this computer? Is there a game which could be fun today?
My favorite game on the Spectrum is a game called Starquake. It's by Bubble Bus Software. The coder and artist is a guy called Steve Crow. It is hailed as one of the great games, the really great games. If you speak to Spectrum owners, they will always say Jet Set Willy or Manic Miner, because they were really two of the first platform games. I personally don't like them. They're a bit too wacky, incredibly difficult. I mean, really, really tough. But no, I mean, there's many great games for the Spectrum. Sacred Armor of Antiriad, Way of the Exploding Fist. There's some really good isometric games, Head Over Heels, Batman. What else is there? Dundarak, Tin and Nog. There's some really good adventures. Fairlight. If you want me to submit a list for you after we've finished, quite happily do that.
It would be great, because we want to show this computer too, but as I said, we don't understand it in that way like you understand it, I think.
The thing is, the Spectrum has, and I didn't realize how many fans it had. And 2 years ago, they ran a Kickstarter to create the ZX Spectrum Next, which would, if Sinclair had survived back in the 1980s into the 90s, the hardware that is now on the market, this is what the next version of the Spectrum would have been, but the Spectrum just died. So 40 or 35 years later, here's the ZX Spectrum Next. So they managed to get a Kickstarter going. They created 3,000 ZX Spectrum Nexts, and we thought that was it. But the demand came back, and they asked for a second Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter was on British TV, because let me see if I can find the actual figures. Here we are. They asked for, no, it doesn't say what they asked for. Within 2 days, they had £1 million. And they didn't want that. I think they wanted 700. I think they wanted maybe 500,000. And within 2 days, they had £1 million. By the time the Kickstarter finished, it finished with £1.8 million. So there is a new Spectrum. All that means is there's going to be 8,000 more. So there'll be 11,000 ZX Spectrum Next. But the ZX Spectrum Next can run in 48K mode. It can also run in a very, very high powered mode. It's like basically it's like an Amiga. There's 256 colors on screen, chip tunes, full stereo sound. It's an impressive machine. I had one, but I knew I would never ever use it, not even to create graphics. So the day I got mine, I sold it. So I got mine for nothing, and I sold it for £700. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll submit a list. It just depends which machine you want to use, or if you're loading from cassette or loading from.
Yeah, we are loading from cassette at that moment, but we have a SD card solution too. It's no problem. We try to find good games, and for us it's
plenty.
really difficult. It would be interesting.
No, there are plenty.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it would be interesting for us too. We are here in a round with with persons who made graphics, and it would be interesting to hear if graphic on computers always had artistic aspects. Richard, was a graphic always art for you?
Well, I'm not really a graphics guy. You know, I did the graphics for my first few games, but I'm not unlike for example, Oliver, who really is a master of arts. I'm just trying to. I always tried to just fill my code and my sound with some visual stuff, which is not too ugly. Actually, I think in the computer graphics are in the early years, like in the 80s, they were largely defined by technical aspects, what can be done and what needs to be done in order to make the game recognizable. And I think that to call computer graphics art, we need to really go to probably the 90s or something, where artists really, where the visual stuff really was able to get into your heart and fill your soul with joy or with tears or whatever, because that's, to me, that's what art can do. Art is when it's able to really fill humans with any kind of emotions. And I think the games we are talking right now from the mid of the 80s, they probably looked good and they made you probably want to reach another stage, another level, just to see how the graphics look there. But they were not like really filled with emotion. And that's something which happened, I would say, probably with higher resolutions and more ways of getting color on screen. And because that's when the artists did not have to think so much in technical terms, like, is a pixel square sized or is it wider than high or something like that, or how many sprites do I have to, how many sprites can I use on screen, because that's what a lot of people cared about in the early years. Whereas from, say, like the year 2000 and onwards, the technical aspects were not as important, whereas the artist's vision and the artist's impression and all these things, they began to influence the gameplay more. But having said that, there are some games on Amiga already which I would call probably art, because they just looked good in a way that you just it felt like art. I need some help now, because I do know there's an Amiga shoot 'em up, a horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up, which has a giant owl in it, which just flies through the screen. It's by a company called Art and Magic, and I just cannot remember the name. Probably someone else can. Agony, exactly, yeah. And that's one of the first games which I would call which puts so many visual excellence into a game that I would call this maybe could be called art. Maybe already Shadow of the Beast in some areas could be called art.
Oliver, is every pixel you did art?
No, not exactly. I just want to mention because we had a talk about overlaid sprites. I want to show this one because this is what Simon was talking about. Because sprites on the Commodore 64 usually looked like this: big pixels. Exactly. Big pixels and 3 colors and 1 transparent color. And well, the major thing on the C64 is they went fluidly over the screen, and they could be you can do very smooth animations with it. But the trick is that the C64 has 2 different resolutions. You see it here in the big overview, that there are, if you do a higher resolution, it's similar to the ZX Spectrum, that you have only 2 colors for one object here. And combined, you have a high resolution object like on an NES or on 16-bit systems. But back to your question, I don't think that everything is art, but I think it depends. Back in the day, I was mostly comparing graphics on a C64 with cartoons. It was not exactly a form of art, but there were these animated objects which looked really, really nice, and backgrounds that look really, really nice. But mostly it was like 2 layers over another. And there are some that are pretty amazing back then. I think one of the games which was highly praised in my with my friends, it was the game Interior, I remember. It was pretty amazing. And there are some others like graphics which were done by the same guy who did Defender of the Crown. He started on the C64. It was a game with Jim Sachs, exactly, who did a game with it wasn't a game, it was a demo only, with dinosaurs and something like a flying object. It was it looked incredible. And also games like Defender of the Crown also, they have very interesting graphics in it, and I would call those graphics art, but not exactly in the term of the game. It was like the game implements art, but the game itself wasn't art, in my opinion. But most games, I think, were more technically driven, and that was also the way I was thinking, exactly, especially when you think about how graphics for the backgrounds were made with those tiles. You have lots of tiny objects which are like these square things here, and to put together like a puzzle. That was the background from a game. And I didn't expect this like art, like a form of art. This came later when I didn't think about the restrictions anymore. I was just doing stuff. Then things became more artificial, I think, more like an art form.
The same question to Tony. Did you create art, or what do you call your pixels?
Well, I never thought it was art. Just when you create pixels, like I create, I'm thinking on someone that looks cool, or I want to represent some form of character or background, but I never thinking on art. It's something maybe with 16-bit systems and beyond, where you get 32 colors, 4,000 colors or more. Maybe you got almost no restrictions, and you can consider like it looks like a real painting. or something more accurate. But well, with 8-bit computers, it's not art. It's just graphics, at least for me.
Some of you create graphics in the very early days. Were there role models at that time for you?
No, excuse me. No, with me, no. My very first game, like I said earlier, I was called in to Imagine to help out. They needed a version of Pedro's Garden done on the BBC. They didn't have an artist available. So one of my friends called me in and said, can you do this? And I said, well, I don't know. Well, what do I do? And he showed me graph paper, with little squares on, with all the sprites. So it's like black square, white square, black square, white square. And he said, so here's the BBC keyboard. Just type in the black dots. So that's what I did. But you see, that was the problem when I started as a professional full-time job in the industry was there was nobody to ask for help. There were no books. There was no internet. There were no examples of other people's work. Yeah, you could look at screenshots in some of the game magazines, but right at the very beginning, there weren't many magazines either. So there was no one that I could copy from. There was nobody I could admire. There was nobody I could call up and say, well, how do you do this? So when we were doing things, we were doing this around the room and people were like, okay, do this, hold your arm up, and they like draw it quick and then transfer it black and white squares. But we didn't have that many frames of animation, so things were pretty awful at the beginning. But like I say, there was nobody to ask for help. You didn't have any heroes. And I'm not trying to be clever or self-important, but when I first went to Ocean to work, for me it was just a job, but I remember being shown around the office. So this is Ocean, this is where you'll be working. And my boss was saying, and this is Mark, and this is John, and this is Stephen, this is Simon Butler. And people were going, oh, that's Simon Butler, because I'd already been in the industry, like, I don't know, 5 years or something. So I was a veteran already by the time I got to Ocean. So I suppose I was a hero to some people. But no, there was nobody other than my friend Steve Kane, who was an amazing 64 artist. Well, he was just an amazing artist. I admired what he did, and I learned a lot from him. But when I came into the industry, we didn't know anyone else. We knew our company, we knew everyone that we worked with, but we didn't know anyone who worked at Gremlin or any of the other studios around the country.
When I started, it was much easier for me. In 1992, I get to work to Beat Managers. It was a Spanish video game development studio for Game Boy Color and PlayStation at that time. And after using Deluxe Paint 5 on the Amiga, I had to use Deluxe Paint 2 on the PC. It was a little bit painful but we got that, and we get some tools to convert sprites and other things much easier than in the beginning of the 80s, obviously. And managed the graphics for the Game Boy Color was something similar to the Commodore 64. You have 4 color sprites and 4 color characters, background tiles, and it was kind of strange doing 8-bit graphics at that time, near year 2000, when PlayStation and big 3D games was around the industry.
Richard, do you have role models?
No. No. I learned my stuff from mainly from computer magazines at that time. We already had some books. We had magazines like Happy Computer or 64 or Amiga, and they had all these magazines had workshops in them, which enabled you to learn how to use the machine's abilities and how to get the best of graphics from these machines, not only in technical terms, but also in kind of which colors to use, which are complementary, how do you apply shadows to stuff like that, how do you get high-res sprites, how do you combine high-res sprites and lower sprites on C64 in order to enhance the visual appearance and to make the character look more lively and more believable. But these were not these were just anonymous features in magazines, and they were not connected to any names. In fact, at that time, I do not really recall many names which were big in terms of that you would consider these guys stars, at least not in Germany, and except for maybe guys like Chris Hülsbeck or maybe Manfred Trenz, who coded or did music. But in terms of graphics, I mean, nowadays I adore what a guy like Oliver Lindau does, but I'm not sure if he's a star outside of the retro scene. I wish he would be, because he deserves it. But it's yeah. As for me, I didn't have any stars. No.
Oliver, what did inspire you?
Well, in fact, I had some artists I looked up to back in the days, in the 80s and the early 90s, especially in the 80s. There were names like Jim Sachs or Karen Davis or some other people. I think in terms of animation, for example, it was Robin Levy, which did incredible stuff on the C64. And well, I checked out those games and I checked out how they did the graphics, but well, my own stuff wasn't really good at this time. And what those people did was pretty incredible. But the interesting thing is that when I got to the industry, I was doing the stuff for myself. I was learning for myself. The thing is that and then I had some objects and I had to think about how to solve this, how to do this, how to do animations with less frames and stuff like that. And when I was dealing with it, I found my own style for some reason, and this is something what I seen way when I left the industry. I started doing pictures again about 2005, and that was also the time when I started again pixeling. Then I did the things my way. I didn't check out what other people did, and I think this is quite important. It's good to have a start when you have some reference stuff to check out how things work. And well, talking about the C64, the first thing that is pretty challenging at first, and nobody is thinking about, are the restrictions, or the static spectrum, even more. When you have 8 by 8 pixels and you only have to use 2 colors, you have to think around the corner, and you have to learn that. And but things are going interesting when you get over this, and this is happening when you don't have any inspirations anymore. It's my personal opinion.
You know what? I need to mention Jordan Mechner right now, because I was thinking about it, and then I thought, well, yes, I had a role. Actually, I had a role model when I did the Commodore 64 conversion of Persian Gulf Inferno. And I thought I was in no way able to do a really smooth running soldier. And I checked out Karateka and Prince of Persia from Jordan Mechner, who was like the master of animation at that time in terms of character animation in 8-bit on 8-bit computer machines. And he was like a role model for me, or what he did was like inspiration for me. He's someone who was able to, I would actually call this art, what he did. Now we're talking about it, because these games, they really felt like a union of visual excellence and gameplay excellence, and they felt in some way arty, because they made you not think about technical limitations, but they made you feel like, wow, this is just another world I'm actually visiting right now. That's how I felt when I played Prince of Persia and also Karateka. So that was a role model for me, probably. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can make a short interruption now. Robin found some other consoles and games which perhaps should be interesting for you.
Yeah, you talked about something like animation, and I thought it was a good time to show some machines which changed the market a bit, because a new medium has arrived. Yeah, CD-ROM, perfect. We can fit so much video on it. So the rest, forget about the rest. It's just video. Let's make some more videos. And so the 3DO came. And in 1993, there was a company called the 3DO Company who made a machine like this one. And this one is from Goldstar. This is, of course, one of the company own names. And it came on the market for $690, and it has a CD-ROM drive, and it has a fast processor, 32-bit, 2 megabyte RAM, and it could run games like this one. Have a look. Isn't that neat? Dragon's Lair. It's a
game,
but it's a video game with just video. So if we could talk about the origin of the game, it was one of the first games in the arcades with supreme graphics, because it runs on Laserdisc. So the predecessor of DVD or CDI or digital video disc, how you might call it. This game has just one big problem. It's you see a video or a movie sequence, and then you have to press one button, and only the one button at the right time leads to the next part of the game. And so this game is an animation, like a film, like a movie. But if you run it perfectly without any errors, it takes only 12 minutes to play it. And if you watch all the sequences around it, it takes 22 minutes. It's 50,000 frames of animated work. So in my eyes, these consoles coming from 1993 on, many of the games are mostly eye blinding. It's more video. It's new, so everyone want to have it, but it's only new. This one is a funny thing. The producer or the creator is Don Bluth, and he worked for Disney. And I want to show you a totally different design, a totally different thing on the other side of this table. So let's go around it, because there's another console I like to show you. This one, this small, isn't it beautiful? There it is. I come on closer. This one is called TurboGrafx, or PC Engine, as you might like it. And this one has a immensely impact on the market, because this is the first console you play on, and this one has a type of arcade gaming, but it has small HU cards, and I showed it. This one, it's like a small memory cartridge, like you have an SD card in a digital camera, and it's only some kilobytes on it, but it runs games like in the arcade, and it's perfect. And like this one, R-Type is one of the most iconic shooters from the in the end of the 80s. The game first came in the arcade in 87, and this one is, I think, from 89. You see on the lower right of the corner. And the TurboGrafx came on the market as a niche system, and it got a massive #1 Japanese playing machine with immensely Japanese titles. Mostly you won't find in Germany, and even won't find any German or European or English titles, many Japanese titles. And this thing is sold very cheap, and it sold massively, 5.8 million units sold. And the games are mostly type of this one, so shooters. And if you would see the version in the arcade, and if you see the version here, okay, it differs a bit, but it's for 87, this thing is, or for 88, 89, this one is a massive impact. In my eyes, these are the differences. On the one side, you have the machines with CD-ROM drives, mostly video and audio, and the other ones very well programmed. So two totally different things, but most of the people loving machines would mostly pick this one instead of the 3DO.
I got the PS Engine console with many games, and I think if this console if NEC will distribute the console in 1987 in UK and Europe, it will be amazing. It will change many things.
Okay, you had some examples, I see. If you want, you can show us some of your graphics, Tony, no problem.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, this is a graphic adventure I'm designing for Commodore 64. At the time, I got only some pictures. I'm going to show you one. This is working on bitmap mode, and the score, the panel in the bottom is in chart mode, and it will have the text for the game and the objects. And we are trying to do a fighting game, kind of a Double Dragon with 2 players for Commodore 64. And we got, at this moment, we got this small alpha. We try to manage four enemies and 2 players, and well, it seems to work fine. Let's see what happens when we got more collisions and more stuff, you know. And as you can see, all the characters got the same legs. That's to save memory. And well, my friend Jamie is working, is coding it, and hopefully we can do a funny game. apart from that, I want to show you one MSX game. This game is called Maze of Gallios. It's from Konami. I don't know why it shows in reverse, but
Okay.
it's you can see the original game, how it looks. We are working on a MSX2 version of the game. And the MSX2 version is, it looks like this. It's 16 color graphics, pretty similar like Atari ST graphics, no limitations. These screens are actually from the game running. I don't. Can you see it properly, or do you see it in reverse mirror?
I can see it
It's
properly.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the look of the game now in MSX2 computer, and we it's going to be released in some months. The coders are Victor and David. Victor,
Beautiful.
thank you very much. Victor works with me on the updates of Gradius and Salamander for MSX2 with the smooth scroll and more things. And apart from this, I got a preview of the new game we are working on Amiga 500. It's a shooter, horizontal shooter, and I can show you the video now. You will see some enemies. We are working on dual play field. So the foreground, we have 7 colors plus the transparent, but we are changing the color palettes with the copper. And we can have like 50 enemies on a screen at once, running at 25 frames per second. And the main ship is a hardware sprite. And well, the musician is DJ Metun, and the coder is Nandio C is Fernando Cabrera. We work in the past. We work in the game called Golden Wind. It's a kind of asteroids clone. You probably see in some videos in this guy, Amiga guy. Well, I don't get the name now. Well, so that's the game we are working for Amiga, and we are pretty excited of it. So, but still we got a long way to finish all the levels.
Hey, thanks, Tony. It would be interesting for us to hear about how long did you make graphics for classic devices, and why did you stop at some time? Perhaps Simon could begin. You stopped working for the classic computers at one time, and why and what did you do then?
The only reason I stopped on the classic game machines was to move on to the next, whatever the next machine was. When I worked at Ocean, I can't remember. I think I worked there for about 6 years, and I knew that the 16-bit machines had arrived on the market, but we were still doing 8-bit. So I remember asking my boss. We used to have a meeting every Monday morning, the whole company, and he'd be like, "Oh, you're doing this and you're doing this," and he said, "Any questions?" And I just said, "When are we going to move on to the 16-bit machines?" And he said, "I can tell you that Ocean will not be moving on to the 16-bit machines anytime soon." And so within an hour, I resigned from the company and left that day. And then I returned about 2 years later, and they were working on the 16-bit machines. But that was it. The only reason I mean, I worked on the BBC because it was one job, and then the next time, my next job was on the Commodore 64, and then I started work on the Spectrum and the Amstrad, and then kind of went backwards to the Atari 8-bit, and I did some other strange machines that I can't remember, the Dragon and things like that. But it was, with me, it was just a case of, because I was freelance most of the time, people would say, Simon, can you work on a game with me? And I'd say, yeah, sure. And they'd say, well, it's going to be on the Commodore 64. And I'd say, okay. But then when the 16-bit machines came along, then it was the Atari ST and the Amiga. And then I moved on to the PC. I did a few polygons, not many, on the PlayStation. But then I went backwards again and did Game Boy Color, and I'm now I'm doing, what have I done recently? Oh, I'm starting graphics for an Atari Lynx version of a game. It's just people contact me and ask me to do pixels, and I'll just say, okay, what machine's it for? What's the limitations? So I really haven't moved away. If somebody wanted me to do a Commodore 64 game and they were prepared to pay, then I'd do it. I don't work for free, and I don't work for fun. It's a job. You know, I've got bills to pay. So I've not moved away from any of them. I mean, I'm currently working on the ZX Spectrum Next. So
are you getting paid for the game for ZX Spectrum Next?
I got paid for one. I did my first one. I did for free because none of us were allowed to make any money from it. We did Lords of Midnight.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, but it was a tribute game for Mike Singleton, the creator of Lords of Midnight.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anybody wanted to pay for a copy of the game, they could send some money to his family, because Mike died quite a few years ago. But the game, his games are remembered very fondly. So that was fun to work on. So I'm working on a couple of other games, but the market is very strange because a few of my friends have done games. When the machine first came out, there was one guy creating games, or he liked to call them games. I thought they were absolutely awful. I'm being polite because there's children present.
Not anymore.
But these games were absolutely atrocious. But he made a lot of money because he was the only one creating games, and he'd throw one of these games out every 3 months. But now the people are putting a lot of time into the games. Jim Bagley, Mike Ware, their company is called Rusty Pixels. I think they've got about 4 games out. But they are taking a hit. That they've had to pay for duplication, SD cards, packaging, the boxes to put the games in, then the postage. So they're making very, very, very little profit. So the games that I'm developing will be digital download only. But if there is a demand for physical product, then I would insist on some kind of a Kickstarter to cover production costs, because otherwise it defeats the object. You can't, at the moment, you can't make any money, real money on ZX Spectrum games if people want a physical product. And people do tend to want a game that they can hold. They want something that reminds them of their childhoods. You know, they can get hold of it and go, oh, this is mine. I remember that. Oh, the smell of the plastic, and oh, the little manual inside. And they want all of that. And on my podcast, I just said, well, people are prepared to pay for the machine, but they won't pay for development. They'll pay for the game, but they think, you know, I'm not going to work for 12 months on a game for free. I'm just not. It's simple as that. I've got to make some money at the end of the day, or I'm not going to do it.
Okay, Oliver, a short hint. Please look at the internal chat of Zoom. I tried to reach you there. The same question to you, Oliver.
I did. But
okay.
I wrote you in on different channels, but you have the same problem as I, it seems, because if somebody is calling me, the chat goes away. If somebody, if something I am choosing here, the chat goes back to the background, and I don't see it.
Okay, then let's try WhatsApp in the background. But the question, the same question to you, Oliver. You stopped making graphics for classic devices too. What were your reasons?
My reasons were more like a canceled project, which was very, very ambitious. Back in the day, it was a game called Little Access, and it was a C64 conversion of an Amiga game, and it was kind of a bullet hell shooter for an 8-bit system. And we worked for this game quite a long time. I think about, personally, I worked 4 months for the first level of this shooter, and the coder himself was preparing for this game more than a year. And we already knew that we need another year or so, and the market situation was went right down for the C64. It was in late '92, and we were already said that retailers, they won't guarantee that they take the game anymore. And as I said, I was almost working half a year, and the coder was almost working a year, and a year before you are told that this game won't make any money, most probably. And for me, this was I was very young that age, and I knew what we were making there. It was a game that was in technical terms similar to a game called Turrican. From those things what we are doing there, and I couldn't get over it. And same with the coder. I left the business completely, and the coder left completely doing stuff for the Commodore 64, and even for the Amiga, as far as I know, and moved on to other systems, doing different stuff. And for me, it was kind of a trauma back then.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. It's a sad story, and I hear that story in a lot of interviews with other senior persons too. It's a problem a lot of people had in that days. But now a lot of people, Tony?
Yeah, in my case, when I was working on Game Boy Color games, I already wanted to do games for Amiga, but I didn't manage to do it until 2018 when we work and we release Golden Wing. So in all those years, from 1993 to now, I managed to work on MSX games because I knew more coders on MSX than on Commodore 64. And but never left the classic machines. But it was something about knowing the right coder or the right person to work with, and I was never thinking I'm gonna be rich, I'm gonna earn a lot of money. No, at the contrary, I think it's PC and consoles, modern consoles, they got the money, and mobile games. But it's really funny to work on classic machines like Amiga, Spectrum, Commodore 64. I tried to do Outrun remake for Spectrum, and I get a very early alpha, and and the coder doesn't want it to continue. So, but I never stopped trying to push myself on working on some game for Spectrum, Commodore, or any classic machine.
Well, what I was thinking about when Simon mentioned those physical releases for old school systems, for those old machines, it is pretty interesting, I think. I remember it was about 2011, and back then there was a competition on the Commodore 64, which somehow was kind of the start of this movement that people are interested in. It was the RGCD competition where people were making games for cartridges, C64 games for cartridges, 16K games. That was the rule of the competition. And every game was released in a physical release with a nice little box and a physical cartridge, manuals, full color manuals with this. And it was a total success. The whole bunch of games were sold out immediately. And for some reason, this became something which was, it was something that happened every time, and even more. It's not the big numbers, because most of those games were sold about 200 to 500 units or so. But it was a steady thing. And I was always wondering about other machines if there was something similar. And I think on the Amiga, there are small steps going that direction. And I'm not sure if something like this happening on the ZX Spectrum too. What do you think?
Yeah, there's people, there's quite a lot of people well, not quite a lot, but there's a growing group of people developing. Some are ex-industry, like myself. Others are just passionate fans of the old Spectrum, guys who used to tinker around bedroom coding, and now they can really sort of bring the ideas to reality with the new powerful machine. But a friend of mine, ex-Ocean, contacted me from Japan, a guy called Brian Flanagan, and he asked me if I had considered doing any NES games, and I was like, not really. Why? And he said, well, have you seen Micro Mages? And I had. It's a game that I've kept on my radar for a while because it's also coming out on PC. They ran a Kickstarter. The company is called Morph Cat Games, and they ran a Kickstarter 2 years ago, and they raised €150,000, and they've released Micro Mages on an NES cart, and it runs on the old NES, and people, they really have done an amazing job. and it looks like, you know, exactly like an NES game. It's not like Shovel Knight, which was like an NES game plus, you know, an enhanced NES game. This is an NES game that runs on the NES, but because these guys have had their machine for 20 odd years or more, they've really pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and they've really made this game. It's actually incredible how big the game is, considering the limitations of the machine. But yeah, there is a market now. There is a growing market among old fans. It's not, you won't find your young gamers. I was having this conversation with a friend, and then they were asking me about emulation, and they said, do you think because Nintendo are so precious about their games, and they won't allow ROMs to be stored online, and they said people wanted to know what I thought about emulation, and I said, well, it's a good thing, but once my generation's gone, then it's down to Oliver and Tony. Well, you guys are younger than me, and there might be one generation below me, but in 20 years' time, no one will be playing on the Spectrum. No one will be playing on the 64. It's sad, but it's almost true. The number of people who will play on those machines in 20 years' time will have dropped dramatically. But that strangely, during those years, between now and then, there is a market for, like I said, the Commodore 64 is back. There's a new one on the market. There's a new VIC-20. There's the ZX Spectrum. There's a new Atari machine coming out. There are new versions of the old machines reappearing, and also, well, like Patrick was asking, you know, what is this strange love for the Spectrum? If you try and buy a good Spectrum in the box, an original Spectrum, you are paying big money these days, really big money. And it's not because of what the machine can do or what the machine's worth. It's people being greedy. It really is. You know, it's like, no, I won't sell it for £100. I'll sell it for 700. I'll sell it for 1,000. And it's not worth 1,000 really. But someone will pay it. But there is a market for new. I mean, if you came out with a really amazing Commodore 64 game, you'd probably make, if you do your sums correctly, and you figure in the marketing and the packaging and the manufacturing and the duplication and the postage alone, posting the game to people, eats up thousands of pounds. So if you came up with a game that every old Commodore 64 gamer would want, you would make a lot of money, especially in America, because, you know, the 64 is America's machine. It really is. But,
well, not sure about that. It's more like the NES is the American machine.
Yeah. Well, no, that's their console.
Yeah, but the C64 was dead in the US about 88, and
well, it depends.
In Europe it was 4 years later.
Yeah, but now people are starting to dig out their old. It's like, the thing is, it's like when you have kids, right? There's an analogy. When young men had motorbikes back in the 1950s and 60s, they met a girl, they got married. You cannot kiss and cuddle a girl on the back of a motorbike. So the motorbike goes and you get a car. And what comes after the car? The wedding ring. And what comes after that? Children. So all the toys that the boy has, they either go completely or they go upstairs in the loft. And then once the children are grown up and gone, the toys start coming back down again. You'd be surprised if you, like some of the geeks that I know, I mean, honestly, I mean, they are really nice people, but they are so strange. But their man cave, you see the pictures of the man cave in somebody's house and you just think, how old are you? You're like 55? And you're never going to play those games again in your life. I mean, they've got man caves that look like the Retrokompott Museum.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the walls are groaning with games. They've got every single machine. I mean, really, I know guys who've got maybe 10 Spectrums. Why? Why?
Yeah, I know the C64 scene in Germany is quite extreme in some places.
Yeah.
I know people who could literally they couldn't use some rooms because they are full of old technology.
But if you came out with a game now that covered all bases, you know, if you did a Spectrum version, you'd hit England, you'd hit Poland and into Russia. But if the game was translated across the 8-bit machines and you did a Kickstarter and you covered your manufacturing costs in that Kickstarter, you would make a nice profit. You really would. There is a market. The market, it's gone full circle. The market is back because people like playing the old games, but they like to play new ones.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
You have something to say about Iridium.
Yeah, I'm very happy to work on graphics for these Iridium versions for MSX computer and for ColecoVision console. And
but
the
here's an interesting question. Andrew Hewson, they have released Hyper Sentinel. And he was the coder and artist behind Iridium. And I wonder, I don't know, I think maybe he sold the name Iridium or somebody owns the name, and because he's brought a 3D version out and it's exactly the same game.
Yeah.
Exactly the same viewpoint.
I think it's because the name belongs to Andrew Braybrook from Graft Gold.
Braybrook. No, Braybrook's just done Hyper Sentinel. I got the Hewson name mixed up. I don't know why he hasn't. He would have sold more copies of Hyper Sentinel if it was called Iridium, Hyper Iridium.
No. Andrew Hewson did Hyper Sentinel, but Andrew Braybrook owns the name Iridium, I think.
Really?
I think,
my God. See.
Or at least he owns the copyright about this. It's always a difference if you own the rights to publish or you own the rights of the property.
So who owns Turrican? Because the markets keep asking for yet another Turrican, and I really think that there should be one. I think the time is right.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, it's a shame we doesn't have a new Turrican for PlayStation 4 or Xbox.
One of the great games, one of the truly great games.
But for this subject, I'd like to ask Richard about his reshoot series, which was what was the main reason why you started developing the game, or why? Because you like to see a box of this on the shelf?
You mean like this box?
Yeah, like this box.
Great, my man. We have to travel back in time to the year 1991, because that's when I when I worked on Amiga games, and I worked on a horizontal shoot 'em up game. And but that's also the time when I thought about how would how should my career look like, and I had either I had to make a decision if I would want to either be a games coder or a game designer, or if I want to do a kind of editorial career, which I also wrote some features for a couple of magazines in the years before 1991. And yeah, actually at the end of 1991, I started to work at Amiga Joker magazine, and that did not leave me, I did not have any time left to work on actually developing games. And now we fast forward to the year 2015 when I kind of resurrected my Amiga 1200, and I just checked if the hard drive works, if some of the floppy the 3.5 disks still work, and I found an old source code of mine which I stopped developing in 1991. And I just thought to myself, it would be nice wouldn't it be nice to try to get back into coding and see if I can actually finish the game, which I started like 30 years before that. And that's how I started to work on the first reshoot game, which is this one. It's actually a physical copy. And I learned so much while developing this very first reshoot game that I decided to work on another game, which is called Reshooter, and it took me like 3 years from 2016 to 2019 to actually finish developing it and releasing it on CD-ROM. And the reason for
it's a good moment to show it. Robin is sitting in front of Reshoot R some minutes, and perhaps he can show us Reshoot R. Robin.
Yeah, great.
You say minutes, I would say hours. So what we got in front is an Atari 1200.
Amiga.
Did I say Atari? I meant Atari. It's Amiga. Yeah, so you see how many hours I sit in front of this thing and wait that
it's still an Amiga.
Something about it. Oh my God. So Richard, come on. Let's tell us why this program runs on such a machine from 1993. Such a weird idea.
I think it's 1992. It runs on this machine because it's a beautiful machine. It's quite simple. I just like the looks of it. I like the some technical aspects of it. And at the time in 1992, I was a big fan of the machine because I used to be editor-in-chief of Amiga Joker magazine, so I had to feel some love for the machine naturally. And I actually just love the machine, and it makes sense. This is actually the only Amiga I have left in my which is still mine. I sold each and every other Amiga I ever had, and I kept this one because it's just a complete Amiga to me. It's quite fast. It has an EGA chipset, which means it's full of color. It can do some pretty good sound, and it's got a hard drive built in. And it's basically the first real usable Amiga computer which I had, which I could use for some office stuff and also for gaming and also for developing games, and that's why I kept it. And that's why the game runs on this machine, because it's the only machine I could really test my game on myself, and also because the EGA chipset built into the machine gave me the opportunity to do some tricks which were probably not possible on an Amiga 500, because this game uses lots of colors. It uses sprites which are 64 pixels wide, which older Amigas cannot display, and it uses CD quality audio, which would be a problem to do on an Amiga 500, and it's just a beautiful machine basically.
Yeah.
See that fog effect, for example. That's something which it could be done on Amiga 500, but it could not be done with so many colors on screen. And it's these colors which really which I wanted to have on screen, quite simply.
I had to speak a bit. Sorry for that, so that our followers and streamers see what's about your game and how much graphical things it got as a neat feature and a good good direct feeling on the joystick playing it. And as I know in our location, many people like it very much. Oh, it's a different thing playing and talking. Likes it very much, and we have some specialists who nearly play through it the whole time. How much time do you play it yourself? Do you think it's good to also be a good player, not just a good programmer?
No, actually, I'm not I'm not very good at games, playing games. I'm not even good at playing my own game. You see, the thing about Reshooter is that I released the game in 2019 in May, and I always thought that it would not make sense to release a game which looks old and feels old. I always wanted to release a game which feels modern, which has a kind of a modern appearance. It shouldn't look like an old game from 1991 or something. It should look like a game which you would actually play nowadays, you know. And that's why that's why I went for all these fog effects, for all this transparency stuff. That's why I chose to spend a lot of time, or I asked Martin Arman, who did the music, I gave him a lot of memory space and a lot of time to work on the music, because I think it's very important to have the full modern package in such a game. And music is very important, game flow is very important, visuals are very important. So all these puzzle pieces which form a game, they should feel modern, and that's why I went for an Amiga 1200, because it's able to do that stuff. It's able to display graphics which are, well, which are really colorful, which do not really look old, but they can look modern if you just put enough thought and manpower into it. And that's I think we were kind of successful. I mean, there's always things which you would want to alter or make better, but I think Martin and Kevin, who did the graphics, and me, we did kind of a okay job, for given that it's basically a spare time project. It's not a full-time project, because as Simon already mentioned, it's not possible to do it as a full-time job, since there's no money to be made with it. It has to be a spare time project. And given that, we are really satisfied with how it plays and feels right now.
We talk about new games on old machines and old consoles, and there's one game on the C64 which sold a lot of copies. I don't know the number which it's now, but there are some 1,000 copies sold of this game. Robin is showing now. Sam's Journey, of course. Robin, show us something.
I think it's about 2,500 copies.
Yeah,
that was the amount I read 1 year ago. I don't know if there.
No, it was 2,000, and it's now 500 units more.
Oh, okay. Robin, show us Sam's Journey.
Somehow people think modern games won't sell much. You heard it's about 2,000 plus, and this one isn't. At least it was, in my opinion, the first C64 game after years which made some impact also on the modern games, because many of the game dynamics are within the game which are truly not old. They are more modern and new. So I might show you about Sam's Journey, which also has a physical copy, which is not so does not happen so often in business. But this one is very cool, and it has a nice intro. It has graphics which didn't look like, should I say Atari C64? No, I say Commodore C64, which only is normally limited to 16 colors. Asterisk some more details. You see an intro, a little kid is get grabbed out of the the room and into the world, and we now play into the world, fell down, and I'm always the one, all the things from the falling, and we're here, and there must be somewhere, no, I forgot it. Must be in the middle.
There's something very special about this game, because it looks more like an NES game, or something like Super Mario or Donkey Kong Country, but the gameplay itself feels even more modern. It's more like a game like Shovel Knight or something like this. It's very high paced. It's there are very small challenges, challenge over challenge, and it's not about losing lives or something. It's more like taking risks and to manage to get over some tricky situations one after another.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
If we talk about new games on old computers, Oliver can tell us a lot of more things about it, because he is doing new things on old computers, I would say nearly every day, I think. Oliver, you decide to do new things on these computers too.
Yes, but I'm not only attached to one system. I did very many systems back the recent years. Some were mentioned right now. I did mostly on the C64, but I also did some pixels for this reshooter project, and I also did graphics on Atari Lynx, and I did some stuff for the Vectrex, which is a completely different system, which is not pixel based at all. It's more like vector graphics only. And for me, it's most interesting to challenge myself, to do things that I've never done before. And something also like I was used to do graphics and effects for the demo scene, which were mostly back in the days. There were two sections. Some said there were effects for the demo scene that could not be done for games. And what I'm doing right now is mostly the opposite. I'm doing stuff I would do for demos usually in games, and to check out if it's possible. And that led to some very interesting projects, I think. One of the most ambitious projects I've done was a point-and-click adventure game called Karen and the Tangled Tentacles, which was released in a competition first, but in an extended version with a Kickstarter with a book called Commodore 64 Compendium, which became quite successful, and I was very happy about this. And in recent years, I started a project together with some guys, or at least the coder started the project before. This was Andreas Larsson on a C64, and it is a conversion of Eye of the Beholder to the Commodore 64. And it's almost done.
That's pretty amazing conversion. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like we were talking about, a market for new games on old machines. I'd forgotten there is, there is Knights of Bytes, who did Sam's Journey or Sam's Story. Then there's a guy, friend of mine, who runs Cytronic Software. Now, excuse me, I was just looking. He's
Jason
got
McKenzie.
Yeah, there's like, I don't know, 50 Commodore 64 games, 4 Amstrad, 4 C16, 4 VIC-20, a couple of PC, then there's some Spectrum, and 3 Amiga. But he is actually, he's making a living. I mean, I don't know whether, I think he has a full-time job as well. But there you go, there's teams out there creating games for the 64. And like I say, the Russian guys on the Spectrum, they are doing things that I could not have dreamed of when I was working on Spectrum back in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm. They did the best version of a Castlevania game for a home computer system on a ZX Spectrum. Yes, that's incredible.
Yes, they did.
Yes, it's amazing.
Oliver, how's that called?
Castlevania Spectral Interlude.
Really? Okay. Have
Yeah.
to check that out.
It's pretty amazing. Also the sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was really strange about the when I was in Poland last year was I was talking to one guy and I said it was this topic about why is it the Spectrum here and not the 64? And he said we don't know why the Spectrum arrived, but when it did arrive, it didn't arrive in the official box, and it didn't arrive with any manuals, and they had no books on coding. So they just had to take the machines apart and figure out how they worked. And the same applied to the games. When they got the games, none of the games were official. They were all pirate games. He said, and I said, what, everything was pirated? He said, Simon, you've got to remember, he said, up until about 10 years ago, he said, or 20 years ago, he said, we were behind the Iron Curtain. He said, we were a communist country. He said, so all the games are right. You'd get a cassette that would have like 5 games on one side and 5 on the other, but there were no instructions. So they'd get a game and load it and then just press keys or move a joystick and try and figure out what to do. And so it became a passion with them, and they just love it. I mean, they really, really do. And the homebrew scene out there is just so healthy.
It's amazing.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's a similar situation in Germany, I think, because it was not really common to buy games back then.
Exactly. People couldn't afford them.
For some reason, most people just copied games. Well, I bought some games, but as I said, I was living in a rural area, and there were not many people around who managed to get the complete new stuff, and so you had to receive them by mail order or something.
Yeah.
But it was similar, and interesting enough is that the scene who is responsible for all those copies, there were coders. They started coding with some introductions for their cracked games where they removed the protection, and then started doing demo stuff, and also started programming games. By the way, what you see in the back of mine, this is the introduction of the Eye of the Beholder.
It's amazing. It really is.
And I have to say, it's interesting is this project lasts about 3 years, and I'm working about 20 hours a week on this.
Wow, that's very hard job.
Yeah, but this is kind of a spirit where you are doing this as a hobby, and it's so. When I'm doing demos, it's also not for the money. It's just for competition and for winning some stuff, and that people are talking about things that you are doing, but also mostly for myself. I'm usually doing such things for myself, just because just because I want to something like this. I don't know if you know the original game, but the animations here they looked more rough on the original Amiga or PC version.
Yeah, the original wasn't as good as that.
Yeah. Oliver, do you have the okay from the original copyright owners to do that conversion?
No, it's a similar thing about this. What was talked before, what was mentioned before with Lords of Midnight and stuff. The thing is, we asked the copyright owners, but they said we're not interested. They don't said no or something like this. They just said we are not doing anything with this. We don't want to, and this is. Which is, I think, better than how Nintendo acts in such cases, because we're just doing it for ourselves. And
you're going to try and sell this?
I don't think. No.
Can't.
No, we already decided to publish this open source.
Okay, a lot of work for publishing this open source.
Yeah.
That's the
I'm
same
thinking
story we had with the Pinball Dreams for Amstrad CPC. We were in contact with the Oliver twins that work at Rebellion at that time, like 3 or 4 years ago, and we tried to contact the manager many times, and he wasn't interested. So we keep working on the game, but we finish it, but we didn't sell it. We just send copies for free to our friends and to our people, and that's it. But Pinball Dreams
you should
is
change
released.
the name of the title to something like Beholder's Eye, and so
That's it.
Eye of the beer
you
holder.
still got the story and all the heroes.
oh, just change.
My eye is older.
Well, we were talking about this, but it makes no sense.
It does. It does. After 3 years' work, you deserve something for that, and you certainly deserve something for something so technically and visually amazing. You really do.
Yeah, and also I'd be afraid that I mean, after 3 years of working, I'd be afraid that someone comes on and forces you to not distribute this game on any channel, like Nintendo usually does.
But this is how the scene works. When it's online, then the scene will do its job, and everybody will play it.
Yeah,
I can tell.
Yeah, I know, but you won't get any recognition for your work then. Not financially and also not mentally. It's just within this very small scene, but you will not get any recognition outside of the hardcore scene, and that would be very, very sad. No?
Yeah,
because the game need to be in the magazines.
Because there's still a copyright holder. I think it's Electronic Arts, right?
No, it's Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a Westwood game?
Yeah, exactly. But the AD&D license fell back to the copyright owner.
Yeah,
and
1 and 2 were developed by EA, and then the third one was developed. Wizards of the Coast actually put a team together, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. It was just because the contract was over.
Okay, I see. Well,
I'd just tweak it and just say it was an homage, a tip of the hat. Oh, we wanted to do a game to show how much we love the original.
Yeah, that's probably a good approach.
Yeah,
because it's just amazing.
It really is. Something like this cannot go unrewarded. I mean, it really, really can't.
For example, with Maze of Gelius, I'm working on MSX2 version. I'm getting paid, but the game will be released for free because Konami got the rights, and
yeah, it's similar.
They will come to us. And I work on sound effects for Ghosts and Goblins for MSX with a graphic card, and they are selling some copies. But Capcom is not going after the guys who actually is selling the MSX version. They are lucky.
Yeah, but you never know before. I mean, you know that Nintendo always tries to that all these fan-made projects, they are not getting published because they have an eye on their own stuff. Some other companies, they seem not to care, but you never know. I mean, they could always change their mind and then seem to take care, and they could always stop such a project. I would never dare to do something like that, to make a conversion of an existing IP, which the copyright holder, if the copyright holder still exists and could still
but
intervene.
actually that is mostly not the case why these projects happen. most of these projects happen because a coder looks at the routines and is thinking, is this possible on a C64, something like this?
Yeah.
And is starting, and most of these projects stopped in a technical demo stage. And the thing is that this project went far beyond that point, and it's way too good not to complete this.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the point.
I totally see the point. I just wonder if what Simon says, that probably it would make sense to release it under a bit of different name and release it.
You're almost making our argument for, you're making the same point. You know, you're just saying there's too much work and it's too good not to release. It like I said, like what Richard said, it's too good not to get some reward, and it does. Look at it.
And also, you have to release it. You have to release it on disc. You have to have a physical copy of this game.
Well, it's a cartridge game.
Even better. Even better. Does it only work from cartridge? Because
yes.
you're learning so much
because of performance reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, that means it would be pretty hard to get all the money together to produce cartridges. So you would have to.
Well, the coder indeed did an own cartridge design for this. It's an Easy Flash game. Easy Flash is something like an Ocean cartridge, which is also capable to flash on your own. So users can do their own ROMs on an Easy Flash cartridge and play it on a physical hardware.
I would immediately buy the cartridge, but I would not flash it myself.
Yeah,
I was too lazy.
Yeah, but he did, because those cartridges are not that cheap, the original ones, and he designed a low-cost version, and so that people can play it on a physical hardware when the game is released. But
you should bundle it with the new Commodore C65 if it ever gets a release.
Yeah. Not sure. I guess our approach is interesting, and I think that people are talking about it right now. So
they are. I'm checking online, and they are.
Yeah. We are talking about art, about graphic, and we want to make one short interruption here in the location, because one game is an example for intrinsic sort of art. Robin will show it to us in some minutes. One anecdote before, I was in a museum some month ago, and that game was there as as art, and I played it, and the director says, "Why do you know this game?" And I say, "I have it at my home and I play it, and I loved this game years ago." And a lot of people did not know about what I'm talking. Robin, show us this very special art.
So we're talking about a game on the Sony PlayStation 1, and I move a bit, zoom up. Perhaps some of you know VIP Ribbon. VIP Ribbon is, from our point of view, of course, a piece of art, because it's so different from the games you know from the years before. It's, as you see, made in 2000 for the PlayStation 1, which is a very late game for the PlayStation 1, but it's in our eyes, one of the best. The thing is, a very easy game from the first point of view. You play a little animated figure in different shapes. This one is like a bunny, but you differ in size, in form. And in the first place, it's a music game. So you say game, and then you pick a song you want to play, and you see the graphics is always in vector style. So there's no filling, it's no graphic no color than black and white. And let's play VIP Ribbon. Let's take it easy, otherwise I will lose. So you play this nice bunny running on 2D on a line, and you hear music, and you have to push in the right moments to the music. And from the first thing you say, oh no, it's just a music game. But the thing is, you can put any CD you got at home inside the CD drive, and you can play it with any music you listen to or you don't like to listen to, and just like to it's this music is generated or is pre-listened, and it leads to a different type of play. So you can play to classic, you can play to hardcore, you can play to heavy metal, you can play to every type of music. And this game makes it to a graphics. And for us, this is of course a piece of art. And as Patrick mentioned, it was in an exhibition. What was this one? Yeah, okay. It was in an exhibition, and of course, it leads. This one belongs to an exhibition. Do you know the game? The four of you?
Yeah.
I couldn't play it. I was terrible at it.
It's very interesting from a technical point of view too, because it's, as far as I remember, it's usually not possible to open the CD tray of the PlayStation 1 without resetting the console, and that's one of the obstacles the developers had to get over. And also, how do you actually, read the audio from the CD and analyze it and put it on screen? You know, it's not trivial at all. So what you see here is very basic, but what goes on behind the very basic visuals, it's not trivial at all. Analyzing the CD audio, reading it, analyzing it, and trying to filter the important stuff from the music track so that it gets displayed is rather complicated, actually. So sometimes there's really a lot of stuff going on in the background which you cannot see. So this is why this game is art.
And
Because
it's great because if you play another song, for example, a Madonna song, every time you play this song, the level is exactly the same. You can call a colleague and tell him, oh, did you play this Madonna song on the rhythm? Oh, did you play that song? And it's great. And we played it hours over hours, and I love this game, but a lot of people never gave this game a chance. And a lot of magazines don't understand this game, and we love it. And
it's very Japanese, of course, but the thing is, in my eyes, if you see the first game of the guy called Masaya Matsuura, you see he made the first game was Parappa the Rapper, and this is another game you really should have a look at it, because it's such a genius game with such lovely music. And this one also has very good music. We're not making it very loud because there are always some copyright issues. But this one has specially made compositions just for the game, which fits in speed, fits in voice, and it's such an ingenious part of in my art. Of course, in my mind, of course, this is art, 100% art on computer games.
Yeah, we can now have a bit of open talk, of course, again, but we don't want to forget to show this special sort of game. Oliver, perhaps you have some other ideas how we could talk about graphic, about art, about the future of this retro things.
Yeah, because there was one point I'd like to ask Tony, because I was checking out what people in this talk did in the past, and there was something I think it was pretty interesting, because the first game I found about which was done by you is this one. One moment. Ta-da!
Ta-da! Yeah, Super Cyber.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that this is for me. It's kind of clone of a game on an NES. I think it was Blaster Master. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, this is a typical game I was thinking about. This is in the DOS shareware era when this was released. It looks and feels like this. And the thing is that after this game, you switched over to consoles. Why?
Well, when I did this game, I wanted to do games for Amiga, but the coder moved to PC, and then we did this game in 4 months. Later on, I was 4 years trying to do more games. I managed to do one game, but it was terrible. It was worse than this one because the coder was starting. Sometimes happened that, and then one friend of mine give me the notice that in bid managers in Barcelona they were looking for a graphic artist that make pixel art. At the time, we didn't call it pixel art. We call it simple graphics, pixels, but not pixel art like now. And then I called to the company because I asked the phone number to one of the video game magazines at that time, and then I moved to Barcelona to do graphics for Game Boy Color because I wanted to work on video games, and I had the chance to do it, and it was quite amazing at that time. It was like a flying in the sky. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was more simple graphics for Game Boy Color with those limitations. And I remember when we changed to Game Boy Advance, because the last game I worked on Game Boy Advance was were Asterix and Cleopatra.
Yeah.
And I do some levels for Asterix, for Obelix, another game for Game Boy Advance. We released both games on a pack. I remember that was quite harder working on the graphics for Game Boy Advance because it was 16-bit feeling.
Yeah.
Each sprite had 16 colors, and the backgrounds were much more complex, and it was at that time where things really started to get tough for the company, because I wanted to do 3D graphics for Game Boy Advance, and we had one coder in the company that actually can do 3D polygons and stuff, but nobody in the company wanted. The managers didn't wanted to use it. You know, the managers doesn't. We did this. Let me show you a demo we did.
This is a Asterix XXL project, right?
It's the pack. The pack name is Asterix Path and Owl. And it's
I remember this one game from Amphogram, which is an Asterix game, which looks like a PlayStation 1.
But we didn't work in that game. We work in the previous. Previous were Asterix Path and Owl, and it's a pack of 2 games. You know, and I want to show you a demo we did at that time. We did it at home, not inside the company, but it's a showcase of what we can do on Game Boy Advance, and it's a shame we didn't use it in the company because the managers only wanted to do 2D games, and that's it. So I was kind of changed to another company to do 3D graphics, and I moved to Malaga, to the south of Spain, to do 3D graphics for a real-time strategy games.
Yeah.
And well, at least I got this 3D demo for Game Boy Advance. I did all the polygons myself, and the coder did a very good job. We had some bug, but as you can see, it's working. And well, that's the story. And after that, after the the PC game I work, it was mostly mobile games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't manage to go back to the consoles because I really love to work on consoles, but I work on one game for Sony PSP called Puyo Puyo. It
Oh
was
yeah, I know that's one. Yeah.
a clone of Puyo Puyo with chickens. And after that, I mostly did games for mobile, for MSX, for Amiga. I managed to do one. I try to do games for Spectrum, but All Run is waiting for another coder, and well, maybe I start another game for Spectrum, or maybe I do some other game for MSX or for, I don't know, depends the coder or the time, but I really started many projects for these classic machines,
Yeah.
and a little bit of them is going to be finished.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned the Game Boy Advance, I was trying out some graphic modes, and what I found pretty interesting is that what you said, that they had a very 8-bit feel. It's completely my impression there, because it's there's what I found interesting about this machine, same with the SNES, is that most people were talking about 265 colors. There are graphic modes that can handle 256 colors, but most of them are more like split into tile palettes of 16 colors, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
and that makes things really complicated. Because most games, I think most games did not manage about more than 200 colors. I cannot imagine, because you need to share colors from palette 1 to B, and something that things look like a whole scene and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite complicated. I remember the artist that worked in the backgrounds, that he got many 16 color palettes for, and one color palette for each character. So he did to calculate very carefully all the colors and everything, how to do it. Yeah, and me with the sprites, I got to because we had 16 palettes of 16 colors, if I remember well. We don't have 16 different sprites at the level. So we actually managed to get dynamic palette management. So the game choose the palette when the sprite is getting in the screen, into the screen.
Okay.
So many enemies with different palettes, but only when the enemy gets into the screen, the game choose the right palette for him. And that's it, and that's the way it works. I remember when I work on these two final games before I get from the company to another one. I remember I did a box. The box, so you can actually punch the box, and the box explode and gives you some item. And I did an explosion of like 30 pieces, 30 independent sprites. So when the box explodes, exploded many sprites, and later on they changed it because it makes the game slower when the box explodes. You know, but it was. Let me tell you something about Super Cyber, my first game.
Yeah.
The coder did a previous game called Cyber Droid on Amiga, and Super Cyber was a kind of sequel of that game.
Okay.
But the thing is that the game on Amiga runs at 50 frames per second all the time, with kind of 16 sprites on a screen. But it works with double layer scrolling and all of that. But when we move to PC, the game on PC runs around 20 frames per second.
Yeah.
It's got many sprites and more layers, more scroll layers, but it runs much worse than the Amiga version.
Yeah, but with way more colors, and I think PC people didn't care because they didn't know the good stuff except from the one jump and run from id Software and
That's it. So we were happy with the game, but in the end, I was still waiting to release the game for Amiga, and then it took more than 20 years for me to have to finally do it. But it was quite good at that time to work on Super Cyber, and we were second place in the contest. The first game wasn't finished. Our game was finished.
No.
We are kind of ashamed with that, but well, his life is some people does this kind of things.
I have a question again. Can you tell us how the way you work changed over the years? Today, for example, you don't usually develop on the old original hardware, I think. Can you tell us something about the past and the nowadays?
Well, in the old days, I worked on Amiga, many graphics. Until 1999 or 2000, I worked all the graphics on Amiga for many things, but only 2 games I managed to do. And the graphic test I did for bid managers to get into the company, I did with Amiga. But from 2000 and beyond, I work on PC. I work on PC tools. I work on promotion. It's fantastic program for
you
graphics.
can see in the background here.
Yeah. And I remember I asked the manager, the graphic leader, I asked him to buy promotion, and he said, no, I'm not going to buy it. And I get pissed off. Buy it, please, buy it. And then he buy it. He was very good. And I work all the machines, MSX, Commodore, Amiga, Spectrum, everything. I work on promotion. And I got 2 versions. I got promotion 5.1 and I got promotion NG. Promotion NG is quite new for me. So I get trouble with the transparent color. And many times I tweet.
You'll get used to it and you will love it. I can tell.
Yeah. I love both versions. Many times I use 5.1, but many times I use NG to extract files and other things, and they are quite good. And you can, for example, make a video with your mobile and translate the video to promotion and check the sprite or draw on top of the video. It's quite amazing. It's something you will find impossible to do on Deluxe Paint, because you cannot capture the video as good as you do in the PC or other things.
Richard, how do you develop games for old computers today? You don't develop on the 1200, or?
Actually, no. I'm using a cross-development setup. So I used to work on the Amiga 1200 in the old days, but I'm now working on a setup which is Mac-based. So I'm using an Xcode development system, which is usually used by coders for developing iPhone games, and I'm using this as a kind of a deluxe editor to handle the source code, to also to being able to see different stages of my source code. I then transfer the source code to an emulator, an Amiga emulator, and this emulator then starts the code, and I can check if the game runs the way I want it to be. I need to mention also the VASM cross assembler, which is used to compile an executable file, a game file which can be run on an Amiga from the source code which I developed on Xcode. So this is a basic development system I worked on myself, and I also put in some macros which kind of they give some kind of automation to certain processes. For example, I can press just a single key, and that means that the actual source code is saved to the hard drive and also to a cloud. It's also saved to a version control system, which means I can, and then the source code is compiled and it's loaded into the Amiga emulator. It's within the Amiga emulator, it's loaded again and started, and it takes me about 1 second to press the key and then see the game. Whereas on the Amiga 1200 it would take me like, I don't know, probably 30 seconds or maybe almost a minute. And then if the game gurus, if it crashes, it would take me 1 or 2 minutes to reboot the machine. And so cross development is a lot faster and enables me to use many modern tools, which I did not mention, like for example Tiled, which is a system which allows me to create landscapes very fast and very efficiently. And that's how it needs to be, because I'm a one-man show doing creating games in my spare time right now. And that means I have to be as efficient as possible in order to create a great game with the least amount of time. And that's possible now. That's also, of course, the internet is very important. Without the internet, it would not be possible to communicate with Kevin Saunders, who did the major part of the graphics of Reshooter, and he lives in Australia. I mean, imagine we would still be in 1991, and I would have to talk to someone in Australia. It would be almost impossible. I mean, I would have to call him like this, because there were no emails by then. And because of the time difference, would mean I have to, calling would be just near impossible. Writing letters, sending disks, all that stuff is not necessary right now. That's why the internet is so important to develop on modern machines. Having said that, I'm still, of course, regularly starting my game on the Amiga 1200, just to see if it performs the way I imagine it to perform. If it handles well with a Competition Pro joystick or a CD32 controller, because that's what actually counts. Does it really run smooth? Does it really run with a 50 hertz frame rate, which means does it feel fluid? Does it feel good? Do all the effects work? Is the scrolling smooth? Does something flink or flicker, stuff like that? That needs to be checked on real hardware, because as good as emulation nowadays is, it's not 100% perfect. Even a great emulator like FSUAE, which I use on the Mac, still has some flaws, and it still doesn't emulate everything perfectly, and that's why it's always a good idea to recheck on the real hardware.
Simon, how do you pixel today?
Today is just the PC. I was the last sort of old school job I did. The first new version of Leisure Suit Larry, I had to do. Now I get mixed up now. It's either CGA or VGA. 16 colors, 16 horrible colors, and it was, I had to make sure that everything was
EGA,
EGA.
enhanced graphics. Hooray.
And I had to make sure that every pixel was double width. So it had to look old school. Now this version, the sequel, has the palette from Leisure Suit Larry 2, which again has 16 colors, but is high res, single width pixels. But again, I ran into problems with the horrendous limitations on the colors. So we had to take a few liberties. Some of the backgrounds are in exactly the right palette. Some are not, especially where flesh tones, if I had to draw a portrait. So I was allowed to maybe have 19 colors and throw in some extras, but everything is done. I'm not sure whether I was the one that kind of told Tony about promotion. Was I?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a deluxe paint. Excuse me. I was. I used to use Degas on the Atari ST, which I really, really loved, but it had no animation. Then I started using deluxe paint on the Amiga, but then was put onto the PC. So, you know, I didn't have all the wonderful effects that the Amiga users had. And I loved D-Paint on the PC. I really, really did. But then I started work for a company and the boss said, you've got to use this new tool. It's called ProMotion. And I really didn't want to. And he said, well, you either use it or you leave the company. So I started using ProMotion. And I've got every single version. I don't like the new version. I don't like NG because they've turned off all the hotkeys. Everything that I've used for 15 years has gone. So you have to set hotkeys, which is really stupid. It's kind of, it defeats the purpose of the software. So if somebody said, we want you to do a job for us, but you've got to use this, I wouldn't. I'd just use mine, because it's just, I'd waste too much time learning all the new keys, learning all the functions.
Yeah.
They've moved things around, and things that used to be here are over there. And yes, you can reposition stuff, but what's the point? What's the point? It's too much like they've tried to make it a Photoshop of pixel art. And I know I know a lot of guys that use Photoshop and they just turn everything off. They dumb it down so that it just does.
Well, I use it on a daily basis. Meanwhile, it's pretty cool, I have to say.
I mean, it's horses for courses. So if someone wants the job done quick, I might as well stick with something that I know. So I stick with ProMotion. But this was a topic that somebody asked me on my podcast, is what tools do I use and what pixel tools are out there? And there's just dozens and dozens. There's Graphics Scale, GIMP, Photoshop. I know people use Painter and dumb that down. So what's the point in buying a piece of software that's going to cost you like $3,000 and then dumbing it down to do 8-bit graphics? It doesn't make sense. But yeah, you can, any job I get, you can do with the software that I use. You can do, you can do Spectrum stuff, you can do 64 stuff, you can even emulate color clash on the Spectrum. So the new tools can be used for all the old machines.
That's it.
Oliver, I saw some nice pictures in the background
Yeah,
some minutes ago. Perhaps you can tell us something about these
Yeah.
nice little pictures.
I'd like to say what kind of tools I was using back then and how it changes today. Because back then, when I started, it was mostly very basic editors where you can just pixel something. I mentioned Koala Painter, which is just using a tool, going to the graphic screen, maybe to the zoomed graphic screen and set a pixel and back to the other tool and back and forth and but no special thing, and as far as I remember, no undo, or at least one undo or two undo. I don't know. I don't remember correctly. While we are using those things, we started pretty early with cross development, even for graphics in parts. So in 1991, I started with Deluxe Paint doing C64 graphics and using a conversion tool and transferred the whole thing to a tool called Game Graphics Designer on the C64, and just to manage the whole loss which was caused to because of the restrictions and because tools back then were not possible to check out the limitations of the C64. At least Deluxe Paint couldn't do this. And the other one which we did was a level editor, because we did not have a development tool similar to Katakis, or I guess Ocean had also editors for game graphics and stuff. And we did something similar, which was the Map Edit tool, which was mouse-based. We had an adapter for Amiga mouse to use this. And it's a level editor just for one game, for just the game which was my last project there. And the thing is that this is also a map editor, same time, it's an editor for tiles and character set in one shot. Colors could be changed for each character in each tile, which was not common back then. Most games had 4-color graphics usually, or they had graphics which where the tile sets the color for the whole thing. And here I could change everything. And something which is also very special, this is what you see here, that a character set can manage 2 resolutions at once. And this was quite advanced, especially because it was possible to switch character sets in the middle of a screen, wherever I wanted. The scrolling routine of the coder managed to set splits dynamically, and I could choose 2 splits each tile line, or each character line, I'd say. A split could be a fixed color, which can be changed, or it could be a character set, which could be changed. So this, a level had almost not 265 chars, it has 768 chars, or 768 tiles. It's similar to Amiga standards, what we did here. Mm-hmm. As you can see here, when I go to more to the top, then you see it sometimes when it's switching, you see this, that there are splits, they are changing, then a new character set is starting there. And that was a way to get way more graphics into the system back then. And this was how we worked on the C64 during that time. And after I get back, then yeah, well, there were tools already which could manage C64 restrictions on in a standard Windows tool. The most editors I used in the beginning were similar to Koala Painter. They were not very flexible. I already used Promotion back then. I started using Promotion about 98. Was Promotion 2 or something? It was a very early version. But I didn't use it unless past years, because there were other tools which were way better for C64 standards. And this was a tool called Timantis. This one. And this one is a graphics tool I used for doing Commodore 64 graphics in a big picture mode. And what you see here is a similar graphics mode as a Spectrum. This is called Hi-Res. It looks like a traditional picture, but when I switched on the grid and I go deep into this picture, then you see that here there are just two colors in such a square.
Do you guys see the stuff, Oliver? I cannot see anything.
Oh, sorry. I didn't switch. You have told me before, because
I look at the picture and thought, what is he talking about? Sorry.
yeah, sorry. And I did. Sorry. Well, this is the tool I used for doing graphics back then.
Is that a extended char mode or?
No, this is Hi-Res. This is Hi-Res. This is similar to ZX Spectrum.
But you got unlimited chars, or you got 256?
Yeah, it's a bitmap mode, so it's for the full screen. This is for the bitmap mode. For the other mode, I have to load the other stuff again, because unfortunately, but I'll show it later, I think. No, this is just Hi-Res graphics. When you go into this, then you see here that you see these 8x8 pixel squares, and there are just two colors each square. And the thing is that those graphics here are some bugs still. That this tool analyzes the picture dynamically, and when I go here, you see these gloomy red dots, and those do not match the whole thing. So when I go there and change the color, I think it's dark gray, for example. Then it works. This is how I did most of my demo scene graphics, and I have some of those here, like this one. It's also in Hi-Res mode. There are even ZX Spectrum versions of it. I have seen somewhere that there were sceners who did a conversion of my pictures on a ZX Spectrum. And this is the most usual mode for C64. This is multicolor. This is with this big pixels, this double pixels. And there the restrictions are a bit more, yeah, they're nicer, because you have to check one color as background, and you can put in 3 different colors in each of these squares. You see here. This is also the graphics mode where most loading pictures were done back in the day on the C64. This is also one in this graphics mode. One thing which is pretty interesting is that this tool also has a CRT emulation. So in the preview window, I can switch between clear pixels to CRT effects. So I can see how pixels blend together. on a traditional monitor. I hope this is it's a bit small, but I cannot scale it, unfortunately. And this is something which happened the past years in the C64 demo scene, that this is actually a C64 picture without any flicker. It's done in a mode called new FLI, where people started to change colors each line. This is something which happened already in the early 90s. But the thing is that this mode also arranged the bitmap graphics with layers of sprites. It's possible to put sprites in the background. And so there are additional colors in this high-res mode here, which leads to something that you have a full resolution of 320 to 200 pixels in full screen, and can choose colors quite freely. Not really freely, because it's a very, very complicated graphic mode when you deal with it. But as you can see, you can arrange pictures which are actually Atari ST standards.
Could you switch off the sprite layer now to see?
Not on this picture, no. I have something here, not in this picture. I need to open another one. Because I started later on with a helping layer to visualize the sprites, where the sprites are located. In this one.
Oh.
Amazing.
So, and what you see here, there are lots of stripes over there.
Man.
And each stripe here is a unique sprite color. So I have to think about that every odd pixel, a sprite color changes in a regular area here. And every even color, the bitmap color changes.
Is it really your task to arrange sprites in a way that they provide a really? It's not. There's no automatic process going on in the
There is
background?
a conversion tool, but when you do this, you always have such stripes here and there, and it's not possible to arrange a picture with this level of detail. I can tell.
And how do you export these files so that the coder can implement it?
I need to use this conversion tool still. But I have to prepare those that there is mostly a one-on-one conversion. And this conversion tool exports it as an executable file for C64.
So how many hours did you invest into this picture?
This one, 130 hours.
Oh, man.
I'm very sorry, because I got to work tomorrow and I got to wake up very early. I got to finish myself today, but I hope to see you guys, to see you soon, and I will try to get in touch with you by Twitter or any other way. Okay.
Tony.
Yeah. See you, Tony.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
I think I have to say goodbye too, because it's quite late for me.
We can do a last short round if you want, because I want to know one thing. What plans with retro things do you have in the future? Wishes, ideas, dreams? And Richard, we are waiting for the third part of Reshoot.
Proxima. yeah, that's the game I'm currently working on. So that should be the third part in the reshoot series, and it should really bring the whole thing a step. Yeah, I really want to move things forward now. The thing is that with Reshoot Proxima, I'm currently in the process of developing the engine. Basically, it's almost finished by now, so all functionality is there. Where we have got vertical scrolling now instead of horizontal scrolling. We've got attached objects, which means I can combine smaller objects to big objects for boss fights, stuff like that. Many new effects, lots of explosions on screen. We've got like 100, up to 100 bullets on screen, and up to 64 blitter objects, which are bigger objects on screen at the very same time. With almost no drop in frame rate. So the basic target frame rates, which is just the most the fastest frame rate you can get on an Amiga, and but also I'm aiming for converting this game to a more modern platform, just to get some kind of financial backing, because that's what we talked earlier. You invest like hundreds and hundreds of hours. Like Oliver said, he invests like more than 100 hours into just one picture, and developing a retro game is very time intensive. And I am aiming for developing a game for Amiga, but also for a more modern platform. More on that pretty soon, I hope. And so yeah, Reshoot Proxima is developing nicely. The target release was planned for 2020. That's not going to happen, unfortunately. It's going to be 2021, but hopefully in the first part of the year. And it's again, it's a game for all EGA equipped Amigas, which means it's going to run on a CD32. I'm going to release it physically because I just love to have something in my hands. That's why it cannot be digital release only. And it's going to feature really great music, lots of soundtracks this time, not just one in-game soundtrack, but many more soundtracks, and a couple of ideas in the game which really should make it feel very arcadey, very fast, very frenetic, and I'm really enjoying each and every hour, almost each and every hour of developing on this. So that's the current plan.
Would be great if we can play it here in our location in some months. We are waiting for it, and it looks great. I see some snippets, and I like the direction of the scrolling. It's the direction I love most.
And
Really?
explosions.
Yeah. A game can only be as good as its explosions, right?
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Richard. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. And the same question to Simon. What are your future wishes, ideas, dreams regarding to retro things?
Finish off a ZX Spectrum Next game that I started 2 years ago, and have done nothing on it for a year because of a lot of things. Life got in the way. So I've decided to return to that. Then, depending on how I feel at the end of that, the coder and the musician are very eager to do a second game. So I'll have a serious think about what that game could be. I do have another ZX Spectrum game up my sleeve, but I can't say anything about it yet. It's a big title. And after that, let me see, let's have a look at my list.
ZX Spectrum and big title.
I don't know, basically just try and find work and try and keep working. Preferably try and get a game. I'd like to do a game that will get me back out to Hamburg. Simple as that.
Yeah, Oliver, what's the background?
I'll have to say goodbye, guys.
Okay, Simon, thanks a lot for joining us. We hope to see you here in our museum in some days, months, or years, whenever you will be here, please join us. And we did a
Press
special
thumbs.
sightseeing tour for you here in our rooms. Thanks for joining us, Simon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Oliver, you have a special graphic at the end, or what is?
No, this is a tool I was talking about earlier, but yeah, messed it up.
Okay. The same question to you. You are doing graphics for the Eye of the Beholder series. It's nearly finished now. And what comes next? Quake 3 on the C64? No.
Not sure about that. No, first of all, I have some backlog with projects I would firstly trying to finish. It's like we did a table soccer game. Which should have a 4-player mode. This is on my bucket list. Or we have some versions of the Assembloids game, which hasn't been shown here, but it's a action puzzle game for various platforms, and I have some stuff here because we want to do a cartridge version for the Atari Lynx, and after that there is a huge project with the Karen and the Tangled Tentacles tool.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for joining us and helping us to do this panel. Yeah, we are here in our museum. We have some nice views. Robin shows us some nice games, and perhaps Robin can tell our viewers again how to find us here. If you're in Hamburg at any time, perhaps we can join together here. Robin, some last words from you.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Au revoir on the one side, auf Wiedersehen, gute Nacht and goodbye. But the other thing is our retro location, our retro museum is in Hamburg Horn, which is on the eastern side of the Alster, if you know the city. And we are always happy to see people with interest or people without interest want to see something here. Our exhibition is open on Thursdays from 18 to 22 p.m. And we are open for everybody. In times of COVID-19, you always have to send us an email before. That's the only thing. And you will find us with Retro Spiele Club or Retro Gaming Club in Hamburg. I think mostly is said. You've got some news?
No, I only want to tell you about our podcast again. We are the Retrokompott podcast, and you'll find our domain at the top of this panel, and hope to hear again. Our podcast is in German, but we plan panels such this one again. Thanks a lot. Thanks to the B3 Biennale. Thanks again to Oliver for joining us, and yeah, have a good day and hope to see you again in future or in retro times. Thanks.